can take these and embed them in a blog. So if you have a blog and you want to survey your readers, throw out a WUFU survey, you get the results back, you can look at the results. Another question over here?
Yeah, when you talk about economic development and collaboration, what are your thoughts on all the activity, the recent activity with groups like Jumpstart, Team NEO, Fund for Economic Development Future, Magnet, supposedly all coming together in a collaborative regional effort? And then, of course, the overlay of the Third Frontier monies. How does that
Well, I
fit
think,
in?
again, it's not a question of not having enough resources. We have enormous resources here in this region. I mean, we have the strongest, or one of the strongest foundation bases. But what we have is, right now, in my view, is a process that looks more like what I was showing you before, which is, you know, in my sense is that we've got something like Northeast Ohio today, where we've got a vision, but it's not quite coherent. It's not quite. It's imposed in a very fundamental way, and people are still going this way. And that's a tragedy because of all the money and all the time that's been spent on this. You know, I'm mystified by this Cleveland Plus campaign, simply because it's a good campaign for Cleveland. It's a very good campaign. It's a good idea for Cleveland, but I thought we were building a region. I thought we were building a Northeast Ohio region. So if it's a greater Cleveland brand, that's great. I'm all for it. But if it's a regional brand, then it really doesn't quite jive up for me. But that's my reaction.
Yeah. I can understand how this would help spread the wealth, keep everybody in the knowledge of knowing how to do their business right and more efficiently. But I can see where this doesn't. I can't see how this effectively makes people more willing to spend money to improve the economy.
It's not about people spending money. It's about people creating ideas to generate wealth. This is about you having an idea and you to build a business and you being able to quickly get the resources you need to build that business so that you become wealthy. That's what this is all about. It's not about spending the money.
Well, for economy to work, I mean, the consumers have to be willing to spend the money to buy into these businesses. How is this going to help encourage people to get into the whole
Here, let me
spending
go
money?
back to this because essentially there are two things that you've got to keep straight in your mind. The first is you need these traded businesses, these businesses that build wealth in our region because they're able to sell products and services outside the region. 90% of what I do, I sell to people outside Northeast Ohio. I individually am a traded business. All right. There is a second set of businesses, which are businesses that essentially sell locally. Those are important as well. Those are businesses that serve a local market. And we want those businesses to grow and to prosper. Those businesses we want to be buying and selling from each other. Increasingly, that doesn't happen, for example, when a Walmart moves into a small town and the downtown dries up. Increasingly, you've made it much more difficult for that acceleration to happen. So you've got two issues that you're really focused on. I'm primarily interested in the first. Your question goes really, I think, to the second, which is you got to have people, but if you don't have the traded businesses to pour money into the regional economy, you're not going to have a lot of circulation. So you got to do both. And the question is, we used to have businesses that poured a lot of money into this region because they sold steel and automobiles and auto parts and all sorts of metal product, metal stamping. But those businesses peaked, started in about 1965, 67 time frame. And we have not built new businesses to replace them. Now, we're making some progress. There's no doubt about it. There's progress being made with the clinic, and there's progress being made in medical equipment and things. But our progress relative to other places that are facing the same set of challenges is slower. And part of the reason it's slower is because we're not collaborating enough locally. We're not figuring out, we're not sitting down and saying, well, how could I help you make your business so stronger? If you have a business idea, where do you go? The answer is, you don't know. The answer is you don't know. The answer is you don't know. And that shouldn't be the answer. The answer should be, I can go here, or here, or here, or here, or here, and those things ought to be on the top of your head. Right? Now, if you go to a place like Research Triangle, you have people immediately, quickly connecting. Now, we're starting to build some of those connections. But again, as a region, we're moving slower than other regions, and we don't need to be. We can move faster. We can pick up the pace. We can pick up the pace. Yeah.
On that note, Meet the Bloggers interviewed the Greater Cleveland Marketing Alliance about this Cleveland Plus campaign before we couldn't know what the name was and everything. And Rick Batico has used the network model that you were talking about, the collaboration. He's gone out into small towns and Mansfield, everywhere, and built these networks. The marketing gal was touting this as this was this wonderful database of being able to reach those people at a minute's notice to tell them.
With the push of a button.
With the push of a button, kind of like asking for a survey, really not using what you were saying, what a network can do with that collaborative thing of telling you where you go for your business idea. So I think that is what's missing in Northeast, in Cleveland.
Part of what the internet does, Gloria, and this is going to be difficult for some folks to understand, but what the internet effectively does is make market research irrelevant. And so, business models that are driven off of market research are going to be slower. They're going to be less responsive. They're not going to be focused on quick co-creation of value between a customer and a business. That's what a WUFU does. A WUFU puts that power into the hands of a sole entrepreneur. Now, that's just one small piece of a Web 2.0 platform.
And that could make you a global company. Your geography
Right.
is no longer that.
Right.
Be, as they like to say about some hackers and some bloggers, in your mother's basement.
Well, give you an example of how this works. In Owen County, Kentucky, which is in eastern Kentucky, probably about an hour from the airport, the Northern Kentucky Airport, Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Airport. They now have a high-tech company with about 200 employees that relocated from Manhattan. All the guy needed was a T1 line. He got that, boom, he's ready to go. So the point of that is, if you look at places like, take Scottsburg, Indiana. The mayor of Scottsburg, frustrated that he couldn't get his telephone company to put in a broadband, said, we're going to build it. So he built a municipal wireless network for Scottsburg. He did a really smart thing. He hired a young woman out of IU, 24 years old, and now they have a county-wide wireless network.
They bypass the cable?
Yeah.
Okay, and essentially we have AT&T coming in now, going ahead and to give us an antiquated 1960 cable system, and yet we have smaller municipalities.
I'm just saying that what's happening here is it's breaking apart. The old economy is breaking apart. And the regions that figure out that the old way of doing things doesn't work as effectively as a new way of doing things, those regions are going to move ahead. That's where people are going to want to live. That's where smart kids are going to stay. That's where businesses are going to move. So prosperity is going to go to locations, and it can be rural and it can be urban. It will go to locations that understand the power of the basic precept of open source software development, which is we can develop very complex projects with a combination of open participation and leadership direction and simple rules. That's the lesson of Linux. And it's increasingly going to be the lesson of regional economic development. Yes.
Do you have any examples of WUFU being used?
Of WUFU being used?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just used it. I use it all the time. It's being integrated into
description
the
of the process you've gone through to use it, if you're using it. A little bit about that.
Okay.
I mean, you're showing us here, but
Yeah.
how you instituted it, and some of the things that changed as you went along a little bit, just how you did it.
We're now focused on taking a weblog that I have, which is called EDPro. EDPro has about 1,800 opt-in subscribers to a free weekly email update. EDPro is probably one of the top one or two publications in the economic development field right now. I have not tried to monetize it. I don't charge for it. I want to monetize it. I want to use a platform to monetize it. So the question is, how do I monetize it? What are the features within additional value-added features that I could add to a blog that people were willing to pay for? And secondly, how much are they willing to pay for that? I launched an interview on Monday, and by Wednesday I knew the answers. I knew, for example, that about a third of my audience wanted the ability to interact with each other. They want to know who the other members are. About a third of my audience wants immediately podcasts or webinars of some sort. Another third don't know. Depends on the content. About 85% of my audience wants access to my library. Wants access to my library. I have 10,000 articles. I have about 2,000 reports. I've been collecting these things for 6 years. I have an extensive ED, economic development library that's very detailed. So, how much are people willing to pay? Minimum amount of money is probably about $9 a month on up. Are they willing to pay per event? Yeah, they're willing to pay per event. In other words, I have a webcast on a particular topic. They want to opt in. So I need a web platform that's going to enable me to do that. My partners down in Research Triangle understand this, and they're helping me build it. So that is an example of how you use WUFU to design a business model. Yes, sir. Back in the back over here. Oh, I'm sorry. Steve? Oh, yeah. Yeah, follow up over here.
Great ideas, but it seems that every single community in our situation, of which I imagine there's hundreds, have to be pursuing these same ideas.
Yep.
Part of branding or part of competitive posture is how do we separate ourselves? Everybody else is trying to do the same thing. What does Cleveland or Northeast Ohio, however you want to define it, have that every other community does not?
Isn't that the challenge, though, of open source? Isn't that the challenge of open source, which is don't try to develop your business model, your individual business model or your regional business model on things that can be easily commoditized, right? So you have to look for the particular niches. And so what would be some of those niches? Let's think about that. Well, That's one of the whole purpose